Good afternoon, everybody. The August 5th, 2021 Veterans Lane Board meeting will now come to order. We'll enter into this meeting pursuant to the governor's executive order to avoid gatherings of more than 10 and the governor's March 16, 2020 suspension of certain provisions of the Texas Open Meeting Act. The August 5th, 2021 meeting of the VLB will be held by video conference call as authorized under the Texas Government Code, Section 551, Tech 125. Access to this meeting by members of the public are always published in advance in the Texas Register in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act. Any member of the public who wishes to address the VLB on a matter within our authority should indicate so in the chat section available to you. I can limit the length of time available to each individual as they offer testimony. I believe that Bob Ray Sanders, the Director of Communications for the Fort Worth Metropolitan Black Chamber of Commerce, will be in attendance to speak on item number 14. So I will ask for Bob Ray to be patient as we work our way through this agenda. In the meantime, our first item on the agenda is approval of amendments from our April 22nd, 2021 VLB meeting. And after my colleague, Mr. Judd Scott, and I have had a chance to review the minutes, and assuming no questions, comments, I could entertain a motion to to confirm the minutes for the record.
I would be happy to move to confirm the minutes of the January 28, 2021 board meeting.
Awesome. Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve said minutes. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from July 9, 2021. I was not in attendance, but Mr. Scott comprises the quorum currently, and assuming no questions, comments, you could just vote yay or nay on it, and that would be sufficient to confirm the minutes for the record.
I'll be happy to do that. And Commissioner, I think I may have misspoken. I was looking down at the minutes of April 22nd. It was referring to January 28th. I think I misspoke. The minutes that I moved to approve were April 22nd, 2021, and I also moved to confirm the minutes for the July 9, 2021 meeting as well.
Duly noted, and I'm assuming the legal team is okay with said language. Next item on the agenda is number. Oh, good.
That's fine.
You got that in the record. Next item on the agenda is number 3, and I believe Mr. Martin will be briefing us on this topic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. For the record, I'm Rusty Martin, Chief Investment Officer. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to take items 3, 4, and 5 together in the interest of time. These are 3 items that you approve every year and that the board has approved every year since 2009. Starting with number 3, approval of this item would constitute your approval of the issuance and sale in one or more series or installments of up to $250 million in tax-exempt new money general obligation bonds in the Veterans Housing Assistance Program during 2022. As you'll recall, last year in August, you approved a 1-year resolution authorizing the issuance of up to $250 million in the program during 2021. Subsequently, we closed on our Series 2021 bonds in January of 2021. As you know, the program is limited by federal tax law to no more than $250 million in new issuance per year. We expect that that's going to continue to be the amount that we issue for the foreseeable future. As a reminder, the bonds are typically structured as synthetic fixed rate term bonds, and we do that by issuing variable rate bonds that are effectively converted to fixed rate bonds through the use of floating to fixed amortizing interest rate swaps. We've been doing that for 19 years, and except for 2009 and 2010, we've been able to achieve a true interest cost of about 125 basis points below market for traditional tax-exempt fixed rate housing bonds. So I'm going to recommend that you authorize the issuance of up to $250 million in tax-exempt new money general obligation bonds in the VHAP between August 13th of this year and August 12th of 2022. In addition, I'm recommending that the final maturities not exceed December 1 of 2053 and the TIC on the bonds not exceed 5%. Unless you have any questions on this item, I'll go ahead and move to number 4.
Any questions from the board?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. So item
I'm
4.
sorry, Rusty, can they vote on this before we move on to number 4, since rather than come back, since you've already discussed it?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to move approval of agenda item number 3 on the, I found Rusty's explanation in the motion very informative, and it's the annual authorization. So I think it's a great idea. Move to approve.
Liquidity is a good idea. Motion is made, second carries unanimously to approve item number 3.
Right.
Item number 4, Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So item number 4, again, this is the second in the 3 set package that you approved annually. This would constitute your annual renewal of authorization for staff to execute certain interest rate swap transactions upon notice to the chairman or the chief clerk for a 1-year period. As you're aware, financial markets are highly volatile. They have been for quite some time and are likely to remain so in the future. However, that often creates attractive but fleeting opportunities for entities that are well positioned to take advantage of those opportunities before they're arbitraged away by other market participants. However, the board's quarterly meeting schedule is not particularly conducive to executing quickly upon these types of opportunities. In recognition of this problem, beginning in January of 2009, board has authorized staff to execute interest rate swap transactions as attractive opportunities arise upon notice to the chairman or the chief clerk for rolling 1-year periods. The period from August 2020 to July 2021 did not produce any actionable opportunities. However, we believe the annual adoption of this resolution will continue to provide us with a powerful tool that affords us the flexibility necessary to take advantage of any short-lived attractive opportunities as they arise. Therefore, I'm recommending that the board authorize staff, as in the past, to execute interest rate swap transactions upon notice to either the chairman or the chief clerk for a 1-year period beginning August 13th, 2021, ending August 12th, 2022. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions at this time?
I have no questions. Move approval.
Second, motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve item number 4. Next item on the agenda is number 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Approval of this item would constitute a renewal of the board's annual authorization of 2 things. The first is a substitution of existing liquidity facilities or the entrance into new liquidity facilities associated with existing or new bond issues in the Veterans Housing Assistance Program or the Veterans Land Program. And the second is to authorize the amendments of any resolutions associated with such bond issues. As you're aware, the board approved a resolution in August of last year that authorized staff to substitute over a 1-year period as necessary various liquidity facilities provided by liquidity providers on existing VLB variable rate bond issues. Also to execute new liquidity facilities related to any new VLB bond issues during the period, and to amend or supplement the resolutions associated with any such VLB bond issues. Subsequently, staff arranged an expansion of the existing liquidity facility with the Federal Home Loan Bank of Dallas to provide liquidity on the Series 2021 bonds upon their issuance in January of this year, and also as needed in connection with any other existing VLB bond issues. Although it still remains somewhat difficult to find large creditworthy banks that are willing to provide liquidity at a reasonable cost, we expect to continue to meet our facility needs during the next year at reasonable pricing. Therefore, I'm recommending the board authorize staff to substitute existing liquidity facilities or execute new liquidity facilities for a 1-year period from August 13th, 21 through August 12th, 2022, and amend or supplement certain bond resolutions to accommodate such substitutions as necessary during the period. Again, this is the same authorization that you authorize every year. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
No questions. And Mr. Chairman, move approval of agenda item number 5.
Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve item number 5. Next item is a non-voting item, and that's the quarterly investment report for the period ending March 31, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, as Commissioner mentioned, this is a non-voting item. First quarter U.S. GDP increased at an annual rate of 6.4%. That followed an increase of 4.3% for fourth quarter of 2020. That increase reflected continued economic recovery, reopening of business establishments, and continued government response related to the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, government assistance payments, such as direct economic impact payments, expanded unemployment benefits, and Paycheck Protection Program loans were distributed to households and businesses through the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act and the American Rescue Plan Act during the quarter. The U.S. unemployment rate ended the quarter at 6%. That was down from 6.7% at the end of the fourth quarter. And again, that reflects continued efforts to mitigate the economic impact of the pandemic. Following a series of actions that the Fed took in March of 2020, a year ago, to decrease its target Fed funds rate from a range of 1.5% to 1.75%, all the way down to a target range of 0% to 0.25%. The FOMC reiterated it at its March 2021 meeting that it will maintain this target rate range until labor market conditions have reached levels consistent with the committee's assessment of maximum employment, and inflation has risen to 2% and is on track to moderately exceed 2% for some time. In addition, FOMC reaffirmed the continuation of its balance sheet normalization program, which it launched in October of 2017. That program centers around the reinvestment of principal payments from its holdings in agency debt and agency mortgage-backed securities and the rolling over at auction of maturing treasury securities. They also stated they would continue monitoring the implications of incoming information for the economic outlook, including public health information, inflation pressures, and international developments, and would use all of their tools as appropriate to support the economy. In addition, they also indicated they would be prepared to adjust the stance of monetary policy as appropriate if risks emerge that could impede the attainment of the committee's goals. Our investment strategy, as you know, focuses primarily on providing liquidity and cash flow necessary to meet continued loan purchase and debt service requirements, and focuses only secondarily on maximizing total return. Portfolio's duration decreased during the period from 3.4 to 2.86 years. Our targeted average duration for 2021 is going to be 3 to 3.5 years. You can see in the portfolio asset allocation, we have a very high percentage of cash. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, a lot of our corporate holdings, our agency holdings, and some of our taxable muni holdings, the entities that issued those bonds have been calling them, using their call options to call those bonds. And interest rates now are so low, the yields that are available on these bonds are so low, even in a relatively higher risk areas, that it doesn't make a lot of sense to reinvest this money in longer term bonds. So we're keeping a lot of cash on hand. We're earning a fairly attractive rate at the state treasury on that cash. It has averaged, over the past couple of months, somewhere around 0.35%. A lot of options for investing that money requires you to take more credit risk and go out longer and earn even less than that. So we've got a lot of cash on hand. We are keeping an eye on the market and taking advantage of opportunities as they arise. And from my perspective, it's just a matter of time. The Fed is going to have to start reversing some of the policies they have in place at some point, because inflationary pressures are mounting. And in fact, inflation's been fairly high in the recent past. I don't expect that it's going to continue to be as high as it has been, but there will be inflationary pressure. And at some point, the economy is going to kick in pretty hard, I think. And they're going to start rolling back, and they may wind up having to accelerate that. So I prefer to have a lot of cash on hand to take advantage of an environment where rates begin to rise before we start deploying that money out any further than where we are now. That's why the duration is down under 3 years. As far as returns for the portfolio, we were down slightly at minus 0.25%, a quarter of a percent. Benchmark was down 0.02% for the quarter. 1 year return, we're at just under 1% and 0.9% versus 0.21 on the benchmark. So beating the benchmark pretty handily on the 1 year return. Our yield on maturity at the end of the quarter was just under 0.9% versus 0.14% on the benchmark. And I'd point out that our average annual total return since inception, which was 1999, is 3.3% versus 2.3 on the benchmark. So outperformance of 100 basis points there. That is the conclusion of my report. I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, this is a non-voting item. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions?
Happy to have Rusty at the helm. He continues to do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Next item on the agenda actually has been pulled. So we will jump to item number 8. And I believe Mr. Eric Brown will present on this.
No. 8
Or is this going to be?
Yes, I'm action item number 9, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. This will be Heather?
Yes. Good
Great.
afternoon.
Apologize.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Scott. So earlier this year, staff went ahead and issued a procurement for the replacement of the HVAC system at the Watkins Logan Texas State Veterans Home in Tyler, Texas. And so they reviewed the bids and are recommending that the board approve entering into a contract with TDR Contractors, Inc. to replace the HVAC system. The board memo has a more detailed scope of what the project will entail. Total value is expected to be 1.68 million, and it is expected to take 200 calendar days to complete. We are seeking VA grant funding for this project, and if we are awarded the funding, they will cover 65% of the cost. And I'm here to answer any questions about the contract, and construction services can also answer any questions about the project as well.
Mr. Chairman, I only have one question for Heather.
Yes, sir.
Heather, it appears to me then that the net cost to the board would be after the VA $588,000 then. So we don't hit the $1 million level, but the total of the
Total value is 1.6, and so that's why we're bringing it to you. Yes.
very good. That's my only question. Thank you.
No problem.
Hey, Heather, do you know if on this project, the new HVAC deals with COVID or mitigates spread of COVID, or if any of our contracts that we're looking at in the homes deal with that? Or
I don't have a specific answer for you, Mr. Chairman, but I would venture to guess that that is being taken into consideration. And I do know we already have protocols in place to make sure that there's air filtration and whatnot in the home.
And I believe, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Scott, that Jeff Kaufman is available. I don't know if he might have the answers to that or be able to address that. Corey, if you could promote him.
Yes, sir. Just did it. It's not taking. Let me try again.
Okay.
So do we know if they're HEPA 3 level? I guess that's the standard that they use for that.
I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Scott, unfortunately. I apologize.
There he is.
Jeff, you should be able, your audio should work now. But you may have to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
yes.
Okay, yes. Yeah, what they did was they actually went in during the pandemic and increased the filtration systems on the old system. And so the new systems, when we put them in, will be to the largest HEPA value that they can for the units that we're putting in. So it's not going to be hospital grade, but it'll be better than your home as far as filtration.
Good to hear.
No questions.
Excellent. I can go ahead and move to confirm staff recommendation on item number 8.
Seconded.
Motion's made, seconded, and it carries unanimously to approve item number 8. The next item on the agenda is number 9. Now, Mr. Eric Brown.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. For the record, my name is Eric Brown, Deputy Director of the Texas State Veteran Cemeteries. Item number 9 is action on renewal of the cemetery and operation in a local cooperation agreement with the City of Mission to operate the Rio Grande Valley State Veteran Cemetery. Back in 2020, we executed a contract with the City of Mission, between the City of Mission and the land board for the management operations of the cemetery. Things have been going very well between us and the city. Negotiations to amend the contract for its first renewal year are progressing very well right now. The city will continue to fulfill its obligations for turnkey operations of the cemetery. Now, the City of Mission is seeking a 3-year term with the option for renewal and budget negotiation before the anniversary of each year. So the proposed budget for the second year, if approved, will remain at $750,000 to be distributed in 12 equal installments. With VLB approval, veteran cemetery staff anticipate the city will continue overseeing the management operations of the cemetery through September 30th of 2024. Staff recommends the board approve the amendment of the interlocal agreement with the City of Mission, and if necessary, delegate the authority to the GLO Chief Clerk, VLB Executive Secretary to approve the final contract terms. I'm available for any questions subject to your inquiries.
Questions from the board at this time?
No questions. Move approval of agenda item number 9.
And if I may, Chairman, Mr. Chairman, before we move on from this item.
Please state your name for the record.
Mark Havens, Executive Secretary of the VLB, the one who should know better. But I just wanted to go along with this item. We've had a couple of factual inquiries about the cemetery program. Specifically, I know Commissioner, you met with Senator Perry from Lubbock, and there has been interest in doing some looking at additional sites for cemeteries. I'm glad to see with this budget that we had talked about the costs and keeping the costs down, because while I like to do these, our one kind of inhibitor here has always been the cost of these. And so just wanted to ask Eric about, some current demographics or what our next steps be. I'm not asking the board to take any decisions or make any actions on this, but just do want to note the fact that there has been some interest in some meetings as well about locations for additional cemeteries.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, Executive Secretary. First and foremost, Texas right now is number 2 in terms of veteran population around the nation. California currently stands at number 1. That will quickly change over the next couple of years as veterans migrate to Texas, as we offer some of the most robust veteran benefits in the nation. Now, in the cemeteries, we do monitor population throughout the state, because it bleeds right into our activity levels, which, again, for us, it gives us an indication of the cost of operating cemeteries. Now, from what we see in the state of Texas, we see a lot of veteran populations, veteran density in East Texas region. And so VA has agreed with me on that. It's a very populated area out in East Texas. We're talking about between the Tyler Longview region out in East Texas. The second most populous region at the point right now is probably in the Panhandle area. And that could be anywhere between Amarillo and Laredo. And the reason I say anywhere between, the VA has mandates in place that says the cemeteries cannot be closer than 75 miles to the nearest state or national cemetery. So they base it on a 75-mile radius in terms of vet population. So we do monitor the population data. Population is increasing in the state of Texas. And again, East Texas would be the location right now with the greatest amount of unserved veterans. My recommendation would be to just assess Texas as a whole to see where we are as a population for veterans. Because at some point we are going to have to look at the resources available to those veterans. And so hopefully that answers the question, Mr. Executive Secretary, and I'm here for additional questions. Yes, sir, Mr.
Eric, I have a quick question. Do we have kind of a long-range projection or strategic plan for the siting of future cemeteries based on the projected veteran growth in those areas, so that as the growth happens, we've already got the planning in place for a cemetery to serve them?
Yes, sir. Keep in mind, as a veteran myself and yourself, Mr. Scott, I always look at it as the VA has first rights of refusal for cemeteries. The Department of Defense has the ultimate responsibility to take care of our veterans. And so the states right now complement the national cemeteries, is what they do. Out in the East Texas region out there, with the number of veterans out there, it makes the actual criteria for VA to put a national cemetery there.
Okay.
So our long-term strategy has to be coupled with their strategy, because again, we complement the nationals. Now, one of the things that's on the books right now, state statute allows us to convene a cemetery committee meeting, so to say, to look at veteran population. It's not an opportunity to commit to build any cemetery. It's just to see where we are in terms of vet population around the states. And so a lot of what you're asking, sir, is really based on discussions between us and VA as far as what we think would be, the greatest return on investment, so to say, whether it be state or national cemetery.
So have those meetings taken place recently?
No, sir, it's being coordinated at this time. It is being coordinated at this time.
Good. Glad to know that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's the only request of the board. And again, don't want to run afoul of agenda rules and what we can motion for and not. But I think just based upon my experience after 4 legislative sessions, this is the most requested for item that I hear from legislators. And to be able to consistently work with our partners at Texas Veterans Commission, and then I believe there's 2 at-large members that help with cemetery designations, that we always update quantitative information so that we can share not only with legislators, but community members as to not only the financial picture of creating one of these things, but also kind of pushing back. Because I was in the meeting with the executive secretary and Senator Perry, and there are a lot of concerned veterans, as you know, Eric, throughout the state that want a cemetery and they want in their own community. And we all would love to have one, but the reality is we can't. And the way I think we can engage the public is just showing, that we're updating this information and showing, the realities of what the state of Texas is looking at in terms of where the need is. But I appreciate your work on it, and we'll make sure to keep the board members posted of those discussions with TVC and our other partners.
Yes, sir.
And this is Jeff Gordon, GLO General Counsel. Just to be clear, what their commissioner is referring to, there is a provision in the Natural Resources Code that requires the board and an executive director of TVC and 2 members of the veteran community selected by the TVC executive director to establish the guidelines for the location of the cemeteries we can have. And the statute allows up to 7 in the state. And we just wanted to bring this to the board's attention of the inquiry we've received from members of the legislature. The board is not being asked to vote on anything relating to that committee or new locations or anything. The only thing before the board, this is just really an explanation of discussion of the inquiry we've received. The only thing, getting back to the agenda item, I think, was Judd's motion with the staff's recommendation on the Mission Cemetery.
Right.
And that's really, I think, the only thing that the board is voting on with respect to the cemeteries.
Thank you for the clarification, Council. Next item on the agenda is number 10.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I think we actually need to take the vote just to on the record.
Oh, I thought we already
Judge
did.
Judge made the motion, but I don't know if there's a second or a vote, sir.
Wow. Okay. I will officially second, and the motion carries unanimously to approve item number 9. Thank you once again, Council. Next item on the agenda is number 10. Ms. Rachel Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Scott. My name is Rachel Jones, and I'm currently serving as Interim Communications Director. The VLB has had a marketing contract since 2011 to ensure that veterans across the state have access and awareness to the benefits that they have earned. Since the contract was signed in 2011, we've seen a substantial increase in general brand awareness, an increase in awareness of what our veterans experience, and an awareness of what the VLB is doing to help. All advertisements are micro-targeted to veterans across the state using databases that have been carefully curated over the past several years. The level of veteran engagement with our marketing material is higher than industry standards. We've also seen a substantial uptick in requests for services, specifically on the home and land loan side. As you're all aware, COVID has hit our homes very hard, but we've done our best to continue and have made it a priority to increase the census in our homes despite these issues. The VLB marketing contract has allowed the VLB to expand our reach to Texas veterans and ensure that they are aware of the services that are available to them through the VLB. The contract has since reached its 2-year limit and will expire on August 31st. The solicitation was initiated this summer and the deadline to submit was on July 30th. So we are requesting the authorizations for Executive Secretary Mark Havens to agree the final contract terms and to execute the contract with the winning bidder in an amount not to exceed $2 million over the next 2 years. Happy to answer any questions.
I noticed, well, actually, Joe, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, just a very quick question. I have been aware of a lot of the advertising that's coming out and the excellent promotional efforts that have been made. Does this make a difference, Rachel, in terms of changing any of that, or is this supplemental to what we do, or is it just continuation of more of the same?
It'll be continuation.
All right. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Hey, Rachel, I like the approach on the cap. I'm just curious how much, for just context, how much was expended, would you say, in an annual or even a biannual basis?
I will defer to Heather on this, but I believe we've hit our 1 million cap each year.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chairman. I think you spent, I don't know the exact number, but you hit pretty close to the million. It was 999,000, I think, the first year. And I think the amount was about the same. And last I checked a couple of weeks ago, there was about $60,000 left on the contract. And I think that had already been kind of encumbered for upcoming advertising, marketing efforts. Those are approximate. I don't have the exact numbers, but.
No, that's helpful. So it sounds like it's a continuation in almost really every sense. And I would agree with Judd that the ads for those in the public watching would encourage you all to check them out either via YouTube or on the website. Absolutely compelling and really tells some incredible stories about our honorable Texas vets. So I'll move to confirm staff recommendation.
Seconded.
Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve item number 10. Thank you, Ms. Jones. Items 11 through 13 will be held in closed session. We'll enter into closed session pursuant to Chapter 551, Subchapter D, Texas Government Code, Section 551.071 for consultation with attorneys regarding matters involving attorney-client privilege information and legal issues associated with items 11 through 13. Following closed session, we'll reconvene in open session to complete the docket. For those that have been invited to the executive session, you've been provided a conference call line, which you can dial into now. And like I said, we will reconvene in a matter of moments.
To all of the attendees, I'll be pausing the recording while the board is in executive session. The board will be returning as soon as executive session is complete. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know in the chat. Thank you.
Seeing that everybody's back, we can reconvene the open session of the August 5th, 2021 Veterans Land Board meeting and resume with item number 11.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, for the record, Heather De La Garza, Special Counsel, Veterans Affairs. As discussed in executive session, this was just an agenda item to notify and allow the board to seek advice of counsel regarding the solicitation of management and operations services for the Richard A. Anderson Texas State Veterans Home, and also regarding the termination of same. And the board is not recommending any action at this time. I mean, the staff is not recommending any action at this time.
Thank you, Heather. And Appreciate the update and discussion, and on behalf of the board, looking forward to further updates. Next item on the agenda is number 12, which is a voting item.
Yes, good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman. Heather Dela Garza, Special Counsel for the record. This is an agenda item to ask the board to consider approving up to a six-month extension of the contract with Care Ends of Texas LTD for the management and operation of the Usury Rowan Texas State Veterans Home in Amarillo, Texas. We are in the middle of the procurement and bids closed for that procurement on July 30th. However, the contract is set to expire on August 31st, 2021. And in order to continue services and not have a disruption of services, we are asking that the board allow us to extend that contract at current rates for up to 6 months. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval for extension of the existing contract for up to 180 days at the current rate.
Motion is made. I agree, Mr. Scott. Seconded and carries unanimously to approve item number 12. Next item on the agenda is number 13.
And finally, number 13, again, Heather Dela Garza, Special Counsel. This is also an action item. The 3 contracts for the Watkins Logan Texas State Veterans Home, the Clyde W. Cosper Texas State Veterans Home, and the Ambrosio Guillen Texas State Veterans Home all expire on August 31st, 2021. The Bonham and Tyler Home are up for a 1-year renewal, and the El Paso Home is up for up to a 3-year renewal. And so the board needs to make a determination and vote on whether they want to vote on renewing those 3 contracts, those three contracts for the time allotted, or if they choose not to, if you choose not to, we would ask that you give us approval to extend for 6 months so we can undergo a solicitation. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board at this time?
No.
I'll move to confirm staff recommendation.
Seconded.
Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve item number 13. Thank you so much, Heather.
Mr.
Sorry.
Chairman, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you actually have to vote on the renewal. So you have to vote whether or not you want to renew the 3 contracts.
Yeah, just for the record, there was actually 2 options, one to renew for the year or 3 years, or to direct staff to proceed with the procurement for 1, 2, or 3 of all 3 of the homes, and give staff the authority to extend for 6 months. So there was several different options for the board to consider, and I just want to make sure we as a staff understand what you would like us to do.
My motion or my intent was to renew and to extend.
I'll second that motion. Wait a
So
minute.
motion-
Actually, Mr. Commissioner, I think that there's a bifurcation. We have to either renew or
extend.
alternatively, we have to extend. So
Yes.
it's my understanding that your motion is to renew the 3 contracts.
That is correct.
Okay, so I second that.
A motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to extend the 3 agreements as proposed by staff. Final item on the agenda is consideration and action for proposed naming of the Fort Worth Area Texas State Veterans Home. Another proud moment in the storied history of the Veterans Land Board. We've invited Bob Ray Sanders, Director of Communications from the Fort Worth Metropolitan Black Chamber, to address the board, and we're excited to welcome you today.
Thank you, Chairman Bush. It's good to see you again, and thanks to you board members for allowing us this time. I'll try to be as brief as possible. Just want you to know how proud we are in Fort Worth that you chose Fort Worth for this 10th Veterans Home in the state of Texas. As one who grew up in this city, born here, whose family goes back 160 years here, who had 3 brothers who were military people, 2 Navy and 1 Army. I am personally very proud of this, but I also know that our late President and CEO, Mr. Bush, whom you met when you came up a couple of years ago, and then got that relationship. Sadly, he passed away 10 days ago. So we're going through that at the moment. But at the same time, it's a proud moment for us because he was really behind this project. He worked to make sure that this project came to fruition. He worked with the county commissioners here and the county judge. And what he really wanted to happen, one of his last wishes, was that we named this facility for a group of men who served this country in a way that they still haven't gotten enough credit for, we don't think. And that's the Tuskegee Airmen, 5 of whom lived here in Fort Worth, whom we knew, who touched us. In fact, one of the last surviving ones who died in 2019 was a teacher at I.M. Terrell High School, where I went to school. He was also an incredible community leader. They all were. 5 of those airmen, by the way, there were 900 who actually went through the Tuskegee training back in World War II, and they served nobly. As we stated in a letter to you, as D. Jennings, our late president, stated in a letter to you, those 900 pilots who were trained, they flew 1,500 missions, 15,000 sorties, fighting Germans in Italy and in Africa. 46 German planes were shot down while they were escorting these bombers, 237 on the ground. And they got notified late in life that people were beginning to recognize them, sadly. Mr. McDaniel, who was one of my teachers, never told me that he had been a Tuskegee Airman. I learned that after I became an adult. They didn't go around bragging about it. They just didn't do that. But recently, their performance earned them 150 distinguished flying crosses, by the way. President George W. Bush administration, they were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, which is the highest civilian medal given by the Congress. And during Barack Obama's administration, well, at his inauguration, the remaining 330 were invited to his inauguration. And I'd like to really just close this out by saying, I don't think I have to preach to you on this. I think you know what they did. But one of D. Jennings' last wishes, and in fact, and we pull this together, back in 2016, Hollywood celebrated these men with a movie called Red Tails. They have the famous red tails on their planes. And because of the Black Chamber and our connection to some of those folk out in Hollywood, they allowed us to have a premiere of that film here in Fort Worth. And the 3 remaining Tuskegee Airmen from Fort Worth attended that premiere. And if you would allow me, I think it's Corey who may have our video, if you'll allow me just 2 minutes more. Dee wanted you not to see this in the abstract, but to actually see some of these men who had touched our lives, because they're all gone now, and we only have one remaining widow left with us right now. So it would be great if this action could happen while she's still alive. So Corey, if you would just play the video from that premiere back in 2016 of Red Tails, and I'll just share with you a few of those photos. It was a premiere downtown Fort Worth. It actually started out with a reception, and as you'll see unfold here. The reception was at Jubilee Theater, which is one of the oldest now continuing Black theaters in Fort Worth, which was just a couple of blocks from where it was going to premiere. We invited a lot of young people because we wanted them to be touched by these folk, and they were indeed. This is at the reception, and there you see the airmen with their wives attending that reception. So you see them, delightful. They already up in age. The last 2 men, Mr. McDaniel and Mr. Flanagan, died in 2019, both at the age of Rich Stoglin, who was a veteran himself, helped organize that event. But some of Fort Worth's finest showed up, obviously, for that. Commissioner Brooks is there. there you see at the bottom, those three great men were now all gone. The premiere was at the Palace Theater in downtown. They arrived limousines. We actually put out the red carpet for them, as they really deserved. City council members, and police chief, state representative Glenn Lewis. It was an incredible affair. But you see the smiles on their faces, and they were all humble men, even though they were all incredible leaders in Fort Worth. That's Mr. McDaniel there signing. They all signed posters for the people who showed up. And as I said, we had a lot of young people who had a chance to meet these heroes. So with that, Mr. Chairman and board members, I rest my case.
And a good case it is. Again, we're privileged and honored to welcome you and bring a taste of Fort Worth and Cowtown to the state capitol. And I think we are going to have staff present on this issue. Before we do, we also wanted to announce that later this month, we will begin groundbreaking on the location. And this is probably the proudest moment for the Veterans Land Board is naming these special places, not only of hope for military veterans, but really a centerpiece for communities in which they operate. So really a privilege that the Black Chamber would be in support of this motion and appear today. And with that, I'll ask Mr. Berkeley to surprise us with a motion for the naming of our 10th home.
A motion?
Chairman, members. The purpose of this is to review, discuss, and select the name of the Fort Worth, Texas State Veterans Home. Veterans Land Board received multiple nominations for consideration of the new name for the Fort Worth, Texas State Veterans Home. The overwhelming number of nominations on our group of World War II heroes of the Tuskegee Airmen. The Tuskegee Airmen, who over 1,105 missions and earned over 150 distinguished flying crosses. They're known to have fought two wars, one against fascism and the other against prejudice. Fort Worth is proud to have had at least 5 members of the Tuskegee Airmen who either lived or are from the Fort Worth area. Naming the home the Tuskegee Airmen at large ensures that no member who served is missed. Recommendation for the board is having received multiple nominations through our online posting and considering the heroic actions and services performed by the Tuskegee Airmen during their service in World War II. I recommend that the board approve the name for the Fort Worth Area Texas Veterans Home, the name of the Tuskegee Airmen Texas State Veterans Home. I have to answer your questions.
Any questions?
Nope. Happy to move approval.
Make that a second, and the motion carries unanimously to approve item number 14. Bob Ray, once again, thank you so much. And there being no further business before the board, the meeting is hereby adjourned. Looking forward to seeing you on the board. Sorry,
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry, but this is based on my own confusion. On item number 13, I think that was on the 3 homes. I'm maybe not understanding. I just want to make sure that staff understands what the board is directing us to do. And just so we're clear, the options were either renew the 3 homes for another year or extend them up to 6 months and instruct staff to procure them. And I think staff was using extension and renewal and swapping those terms. And I just want to make sure that when we go back, we are following your orders. And I'm very sorry for not bringing this up at the time.
And I guess I'll restate that renewing for another year was kind of the intent of the motion. I don't know if Mr. Scott has a different opinion on that, but
No, I agree with that. And so it would be a renewal, not an extension. And I vote in favor.
Okay. I just didn't want to, and I'm not asking you to read a new motion. I just want to make sure staff understands your instructions.
Right.
Pursuant to the governor's executive order to avoid gatherings of more than 10 and pursuant to the governor's March 16, 2020 suspension of certain provisions of the Texas Open Meeting Act, the August 13, 2021 special meeting of the Veterans Land Board will now come to order. We'll do so as authorized under the Texas Government Code, Section 551.125. Access to this meeting is accessible to the public and was advanced in advance published in the Texas Register in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act. Any member of the public who wishes to address the Veterans Land Board on a matter within the authority of the board should indicate so, though we have one item on today's agenda. I can limit the length of time available to each individual, but please notify Corey in your Q&A section as to whether or not you want to comment or part of the public on one of the agenda items. Not tracking any visitors at this time, so we can go ahead and begin our first and only item today, which is the first agenda item posted, which is consideration and possible action to renew management and operation agreements with Texas VSI. And I believe either Mr. Berkeley or Heather De La Garza will brief on this issue.
Commissioner, this is Jeff. I believe that this matter would be something to take into executive session, as we did last week.
Correct, because it involves a variety of legal issues. And we will enter into closed session, assuming no objections, questions, or concerns about that, pursuant to Chapter 551, Subchapter D, Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, for consultation with our attorneys regarding a matter involving attorney-client privilege information and legal issues associated with items, or the only item in today's agenda. Following closed session, the board will reconvene in open session to complete the docket. Members of the board and also those on staff that will be briefing, I believe you've been provided access to a phone conference number and code. But in the meantime, please turn off your video and your sound capabilities while we are in executive session.
Well, we're getting good about this back and forth.
The open session of the August 13, 2021 special meeting of the VLB will now resume with item number 1.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Jeff Gordon, GLO General Counsel. The agenda item number 1 concerns the 3 management and operation contracts that are currently in place, held by Texas VSI at the El Paso, Bonham, and Tyler homes respectively. Each of them expire August 31st. The issue before the board is whether to renew those contracts for VSI or to instruct staff to go out into the marketplace and re-procure those services through a standard state of Texas RFP. And I'm happy to answer any questions, as well as Heather De La Garza from my staff and John Berkeley from Vet Homes is here as well.
Any questions from the board at this time?
No questions. Ready to move if anybody wants to. Or if you want me
I can go ahead and I will move to reprocure all 3 agreements for management and operation services on the aforementioned homes.
Seconded.
Hearing
Mr.
Grant also
Chairman,
trying to second, just for the record, just want to make sure that we have, Grant, were you in support of the motion as well?
Yes.
So
And-
hearing that
and-
motion.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I hate to interrupt. I just want to make sure that this would, because we are going to re-procure and it will take some time and the contracts expire. I want to make sure that the board is comfortable with and then authorizes staff to, if necessary, continue those contracts with the current vendor up to 180 days while the procurement proceeds. Is the board comfortable with that?
Yes.
And if so, could I respectfully ask if the board would amend the motion accordingly to reflect that?
All right, I'll try my best. So the motion on the table is to reprocure these management and operation services for the 3 aforementioned homes, and staff is authorized to extend up to 180 days to allow for the reprocurement to take place.
I'll second the amended motion.
Mr. Moody, are you in support as well?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Motion, council, does that meet your satisfaction?
Perfect. 100%. Thank you all very much.
Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve item number 1. There being no further business before the board, the meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you, everyone.